So we'll get started momentarily on the topic. I see at least one new face out in the crowd today. My name is Jason Coutu. I've been passionately trying to get a discussion group, interest group in Saskatoon around software testing going for the better part of my career. So I think Emily was a member of my very first incarnation of this, which was held in a friend's kitchen about a decade ago. That one didn't last very long. I think we had 5 or 6 meetings, and we tried to get on to season 2, and none of us could find space in our kitchen to do it, and it just sort of died. This is the 4th season of Saskatoon Testing Discussion Group, and it's thankfully the first season where I have people helping me out. Vendasta graciously gives us the space and the food for the meetings, but that's not everything there is to it. There's also a selection of topics and research of topics for which there's a group of gentlemen helping me out, thankfully very much. Dale Birch, Ben Stoltz, and Kirby McInnes have been helping me this season selecting the topics, and as the season goes on, they'll be helping me present the topics. So that you don't have to constantly look at my face up here. So I think I know most of you. Who here this is your first time to Saskatoon Testing Discussion Group? Introduce yourself.
Brad, I work at Vendasta. We've got at Vendasta, we have T-shaped work groups, and I consider myself to be sort of my primary focus is development, but my secondary is more and more becoming testing.
Cool. Everyone else here is familiar with our formats. Apparently we have a meeting going on. Yay. Let's get that over to the right screen. Meeting formats for the past few years have very much been a topic is presented and led for the first discussion point or two by whoever is up in front, and we generally mind map our way through a group discussion of the topic so that we get input from all. We are proposing a couple new discussion formats this year. Some panel discussions, guest presenter doing an actual talk. I think there are 2 of those proposed for this season. An exploration of a topic that none of us have experience with, so it'll be more of a presentation in that area. Ben has offered to take us down the wily rabbit holes of testing with hardware, which isn't something a lot of us get a chance to play around in. So that will be excellent. The full season calendar for the rest of the season should come out soon. I just need to meet with these gentlemen and firm up dates on the rest of the schedule, and then we'll publish it, which will be a first for us to have a full season schedule published before the last day of the season. So, excellent. So it's 12:15. I am live streaming. I've done a mix over the past few years of live streaming some of these and just recording them. I try to make recordings available afterwards, link them on the group, so that if you do miss one, there was a topic you're interested in, you can always join remotely, YouTube watch remotely, or YouTube watch afterwards. So, that being said, our topic for today, and the content committee is going, that's not what we discussed, is showing testing value. When I originally proposed this topic to the content committee, I proposed it as testing ROI. And because I thought that sounded good, how do we show our return on investment on testers and the activities that we do? I thought that sounded like a great topic, and then I got to do my research on it. And almost everyone in industry considers testing as a cost center, so the return on investment is always negative. I'm like, oh, that's a really depressing topic. How do we turn this into a positive topic for us to talk about, to be enthused by the testing activities that we do? How do we find a way for this group to have a discussion by which we can all grow, and when we go back to our organizations, we can affect that perception of negative ROI? And so the easiest way I thought to do this was, well, how do we show testing value to the organizations that we're involved in? The easiest and most obvious one is that we find defects before productions. Wow. We find defects before productions. This is your classical menial definition of the word tester. It's that person at the end of the cycle that you hired off the street because they weren't skilled enough to be a developer, and so you gave them a bunch of test cases, and at the end they wrote your report of all the defects that they found, which you promptly told them half of them weren't actually defects, those were features, and shipped it anyway. There is obviously some value in finding defects in software, in products before they're shipped to customers. Customers rarely like finding defects, but I think there are stronger, more valuable activities that we as professionals involved in testing do for our organizations that that have value, that show us to be more than somebody they can hire off the street to just run some tests and fill out a checklist at the end. And so I think in my organization, the biggest thing that I do to show value is I provide insight into possible I want to say trouble areas, but that's not quite right. I've been coaching teams to do things that, what I call theoretical testing before any line of software is written. So provide insight into design limitations. There we go. I provide insight into design Hey, it's white. Sweet. The screen. The color finally fixed itself. I think that's probably the most valuable thing that I do here at Vendasta. It's going to be one of those days. Right here it says provide insight into design limitations. So when I get into a design architecture session with my testing hat on, with designers, with architects, I'm able to say, yeah, that design looks great, but we said we wanted to fulfill this feature solution. We wanted to solve this problem, but part of that problem is that the user doesn't have very good dexterity, and you've made a screen with 52 controls on it. How are they ever going to use it? Oh, you're right, let's go back to the design. Or talking about things with design flow. Yes, it solves the problem, but the use case flow is 56 steps long and has 3 backtracks in it and 8 loops. 1, we're never going to be able to test it and verify it, and 2, the users are going to get sick of it 6 steps in and throw it away. So that's one of the things I do to provide testing value. I do theoretical testing on designs and architectures that are presented. And so I've salted the discussion. I've put a lower value, but value up there, and I've put one of what I feel is one of the higher value things that I do up there. And now it's my turn to turn it over to you guys and say, what are some of the things that you do when you're wearing your testing hat that provides value? And it can be anywhere on the value spectrum, because our value to the organizations that we work with isn't just one activity. It's the entire spectrum of what we do, right? If developers were only valued for the hours where they wrote code, it would be completely different. I think we all acknowledge that I'm just going to have to put up with it flickering today. I got to put an app in line or something. Or use a PC. It's not actually a kick at max, although it is a little bit. I never have this problem when I use a PC.
The Epson app, you guys correct?
Possibly. Anyway, value. Who's got a value? Dale.
Product expert. Expected of behaviors of whatever.
Did I? How did that happen? Well, I spell behaviors. You can finish what you were going to say about it, because I know where you're going.
So it's not just knowing the expected behavior, it's knowing where to look in my product to find error logs, to be able to dig into something for root cause, to anticipate issues when moving into design limitations, know the history of what we built so that we can provide input on what's coming up next and how we can do that better. Those types of things around our products. And it doesn't come the first day, it's developed over time as you start to have that context.
Yeah. Their testers can definitely become amazing resources for product managers and product owners about how the intricacies of a product does work as opposed to supposed to work, because they spend all their time working with that product. And so when they need to change the flow, sometimes in a rush to create a new feature, you forget about a user type or how a specific feature works.
Can think more from the user perspective.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to write this as provide a user proxy, because that is one of the major roles that we as testers do, is we provide a proxy for the users that are going to be using the product. We try to imagine as many different types of users and important users.
Can we develop personas on?
Sure. As a subtype, develop personas. So that it's so that we're solving the issues that our users actually have. Yes, I hand over here.
Well, I had two. One of them was the implementation of the protection
Mm-hmm.
like how a lot of times service number, feedback, one. The other part of it is the testing of getting ideas back, tools back to the program is that this is making a mistake because of this. It doesn't always happen, but it helps to troubleshoot.
So of course, this always ends up turning into a, what can Jason misspell this week? There we go. So insight into root causes and related issues. Developers, I'm not trying to trash developers, but developers are problem solvers. And so they often get very tunneled into the problem that they're trying to solve, and they don't, without the scope of the rest of the application, which they've often narrowed out of their scope so that they can concentrate on the feature that they're working on. It is often hard to see how two bugs which have very different presentations can have unified causes. And that's often easier for testers to see because they're concentrating more on the data and the outcomes as opposed to the action that's actually being taken, which is where the developers are concentrating.
I think testers can provide value early on when a feature is being designed and outlined, as long as we get developers feedback on how are we going to do that. A lot of developers say, what is it that's going to done? And I know it works because it says it does. But after the feature is out in the wild, executives want to know what's our measurement of success of this feature. Develop it that way. To have all of that in advance, I think shows value.
Yeah, it's very true. Bessemer uses a waterfall approach, and it's usually 12 or 18 months for a product to get through. And you make these awesome, you said, developers are problem solvers. You make these awesome ideas and design and how to implement them. And you look at them and you say, wow, that's really cool, but it's also really complicated. And have you thought about some of the sciences and how we can inject data into this area so we can really rigorously test it? Because we might be getting data back from cell phones in the field that has spotty connection. All of those sorts of things.
So just on the backside of those two, as developers, I wrote testability, because that's really what that question is asking asking the developers that you're working with, or asking yourself when you're wearing your developer's hat as opposed to wearing your tester's hat, is how am I going to prove to somebody other than me that this works? Because proving things to yourself is really easy. I read the code, it works. I copied and pasted it back in, and I missed one. I caught our VP of development sent me an SQL query that he assured me worked perfectly. It probably would have if his copy replace had actually worked on all of the variables. But the other side of this is actually something we're fighting with here at Vendasta right now is monitoring. How do we know that we can prove that the code works when we develop it. How do we prove that it does what we wanted it to do? How is it related to performance metric? So if we did this to get more customers, how do we prove that it got us more customers? We may have got more customers, but how do we prove that it got us more customers? That's often a question that developers and business analysts find very hard to answer, is that they've come up with this great idea. This is going to be awesome. And they do it, and it works really well. But how do they know anyone's actually using it? Or if they use it once and then never use it again, like how do we analyze behaviors around the feature after it's complete to know if it's actually solving the problem? Because it solves our problem. We proved that it solved the problem. But how do we know that it's actually solving our user's problem? Did we understand the user correctly?
Just value in process improvement with anything. Oftentimes, process improvement means the issues that we have that pain points from customers. So you can be advocates for improvements, experiments, keep changes to better review those pain points and make better quality software.
Have it for team process improvement. spoken like someone on an agile team can only say. And Ben just goes, no.
Our managers advocate for things as opposed to. So along the lines of finding defects before production and protecting the organizational reputation, those two things I had a couple of comments on. First, the organizational reputation. There are customers that we have because of our reputation, and upholding that reputation is very important. If they see things starting to slide, our competitors are not insignificant bodies in the market. They are very, very good, high value corporations. So that's one thing. If we're not doing appropriate testing, we're not going to. It's not just the testers that are responsible for that corporate image. There's a lot of other things, but as the last ones that maybe touch it before production, there's a lot of value in testing. And finding defects before production, like we have a lot of drive to finish a product and take that team that's on that product and move it to another product. And that's great, it works out fine on paper, but in real life, what happens is we have this long tail of support where, we didn't integrate that thing, or we've got a bunch of bugs in the field that are hard to find because we didn't have the right test equipment. We're getting better and better at that, but finding defects before production can save a huge amount of money. Because the next big project that you have your developers and testers and project managers, etc. They start getting clawed back into these areas where it's like, well, I haven't touched that code in 3 months, but I'll help find it. Sure. And next thing you know, you've really burned a couple of weeks just getting back into the speed of that older product or that other product that you haven't touched in a while. And by eliminating that tail through good testing, hopefully, you can save the organization a lot of money and provide opportunities.
Yep. Excellent. Who else?
The lines of like product so like testers don't have add value, particularly like say new hires or new developers, they can have give them
Yeah, usability testing is an entire realm of testing all to itself, and it doesn't really find defects before production. It's kind of related to your organization reputation that the product is easy to use. I picked it up. It came with good documentation, or the documentation was accurate. These are all sort of things that are a little bit different than finding defects before production. But they're still vitally important to organizational reputation because a product that goes out that doesn't have any bugs in it but is really hard to use will adversely affect.
You want to install it from your phone. You get the next one. Try that one out.
Yeah?
It's true. Even apps, for the Mac or whatever, you can buy them for $5. They're wasting their life because they're hard to use. You just stop using them.
Yeah, so I have to kind of tilt this mind map a little bit because up until this point, it's kind of been focusing on showing the value of testers, of being tested. So coming from a developer's perspective, any developer who doesn't consider themselves a tester, you'll probably write regression tests to stop things from failing. And the test would probably be something along the lines of test it works. And then they'll write a test that tests something, but it's not necessarily an explanation. So as a developer who has to switch into kind of to focus more on testing, the value of that is that I can kind of design tests that will tell a story whoever runs into them in the future. make it clear.
Testing was for documentation.
Yeah.
To continue to tilt in that direction, I think that the testers can also help software teams be more productive and be more dynamic. A lot of my developers are very focused on that one particular thing, and by helping them, I've got to test these 1,000 things, can you help me? And let me move on to the next thing, and you can help me test that, and from point A to point B is actually shorter. So they can help developers get through some of that initial design. So,
Along with some lines, is that if you were to take, and try to show a company that testing max value, and they are resistant to hiring testers because of the negative cost implications, that they're like, no, developers can do all that. So we really want to point out that developers are resistant to doing some of those issues because their passion doesn't lie, or their passion doesn't and checking off the lot you have. Whereas having value in customers is that we see that they're very passionate about these things. This is why they're using things. There's a value in testing is sometimes
Yeah. There's definitely unintentional bias in all creatives, not just developers, all creatives, that which they are creating works for everything that they want it to. And the idea that someone would use their creation for something other than exactly what they want it to is an unintentional bias that we all have. I have it when I write. I don't always see the unintended meanings of what I'm saying because I'm focusing on who my audience is. My audience is usually testers. The developer goes to read it and they get an entirely different perception of what I was trying to say. No, but exploration of non-happy paths is not something a creator of something is likely to do unless it's pointed out to them that it needs to support those, because there's a difference between proving something works and proving that something is broken. It's very easy to ask a creator to prove that something works. They'll happily do it. Asking them to prove that it's broken is harder. They created it. Of course it's not broken. Right? So yeah, I threw up exploration of non-happy paths up there because it's the creator of an object often finds that very hard to do. Celia.
So one thing I was both concepts is asking feedback. So this guy's talking about kind of our team using code 6 months ago, and now it takes a long time to measure what that change of code is doing. If I'm working on something today, and somebody finds a bug today or next week, it's a lot easier to fix it sooner rather than on something that was 6 months ago.
Testing reduces cycle time versus customer discovery. Really what we're talking about.
In that same discussion across there, if a customer finds it, they're usually going to go through a support line. A support person is going to spend 2 hours looking at it. They're going to escalate it to somebody else. They're going to spend some time investigating it. They're going to document a bug. It's going to get handed off to a product owner to figure out where it falls in the cycle. It's going to get handed off to a team. The team's going to have their context where if a bug's found in an earlier cycle, I go, hey man, this is broken. And that has a significantly lower cost than the support line.
Well, there's the wage that you pay other people, but there's also like as a user that complains about problems, like we're using this video chat thing and there's lots of echo. Like, you should part of the team that I work with on that, and it's super frustrating. I've got tickets open, but it's like a daily email, and it's just, I'm slowly getting up that tier, but my experience is really good.
And
It's
even
almost
once
got
we
to the
fix
point
it,
where I don't
it's gonna
even
go
know
through a
what it is.
release cycle, it's gonna trickle back down to the updates, that entire conversation is over.
There's so many similar products on the market. Like, what's stopping you from using one of their services?
I don't know, we still use language, so.
Yes.
I've found that it's not the application that causing the problem. Probably it's fast that quality testing and everything. But the problem is the benchmark. Probably after some time, after 6 months, we found out that the application it's meet all the requirements of the user, but it's exponentially getting slower and slower because it's some high pressure of that is not supporting the amount. Usually challenge for not just for the mouse user environment, and it's hard to do.
It's really hard to do that before the product is done.
Yeah.
On that scale, a screen that, in my test environment has 6 salespeople, so what if the problem is 800, you know, they think that that's growing, 800 is another value.
Yeah.
It worked fantastic, but it's only on small scale. How does this react with 10,000 items?
Benchmarking, load testing, product aging, all of those things that require far sight and future sight of how the product will age over time are hopefully identified by business analysts, but probably at least introduced by someone wearing a testing hat to say, yes, this works on my local test environment, but what does our production environment really look like? I saw a hand coming up over here.
Provide a verifiable and verified product to the end user based on published specs and
Okay, I'm processing that. I'm trying to turn that into a showing testing value by, because we have the, I guess it's a little bit different than asking developers how to prove it, because it's the actual proof, right?
I think what Terry is saying kind of fits into the organizational reputation and finding people.
Yes.
Like if you put out some marketing data saying coming soon, this deadly awesome thing, and it's going to do all this radical stuff, and then you don't actually test all that radical stuff, and it doesn't do all that radical stuff. I think Terry's making sure that the value here in testing is that we're walking the walk to back the talk. What's the requirement?
So perception and expectation versus reality. So the specs may say one thing, the AC may say one thing, but what did marketing say?
If I can attempt to interpret that as a further, I think maybe at some point there's one of the grabbing points is in sort of like a scientific application.
Mm-hmm.
The tester would probably be a person who knows like the facts, like the mathematical facts. That they want to use either to treatment for developers or to test.
Domain expertise.
Yeah.
And while testers can often be domain experts or proxies, they're often, because they often can't be that domain expert. I used to work for a statistics company. Got a minor in statistics, but I can't actually tell you a whole lot about 9 sigma distributions. We never covered that. It's a minor, not a major. So I had to do a lot of reading so I could understand it enough to verify it and have conversations with the developers who were developing it but they often had questions I couldn't answer. So I had to be the proxy for the domain expert because I knew who the domain expert was, so I could go ask those questions and sort of work with the developer and the domain expert to coordinate discussions to provide deeper understanding. Interpreter, definitely. So I looked at my phone a second ago to see what time it was, and then forgot to look at the time.
Do you have an exploration of non-happy paths?
Yeah. Oh, there's someone?
Exploration of all paths?
Sure.
Paths that might not be neither happy nor unhappy, but just it's a different path.
Certainly, there are often combinatorically large numbers of paths through an application, and even the testing of the happy path might not be able to adequately test paths, which are not necessarily unhappy paths, but they're not the happiest path through, which is the most often tested, easiest to refresh and test, etc. It is 12:50, so I'm going to wrap up today's session by saying thank you very much for helping us create this very large, not overly branchy, but very round mind map. I will publish the mind map on in the Google Plus group and on the Meetup, as well as links to the YouTube stream if you need to review it or want to share it with anyone. We have solidified the meeting date to be the third Wednesday of the month. So today is what, the 19th? Today's the 19th? 20th. So I believe our next one is February the 16th. Should be right. It's in that the kids are on vacation week. The Monday is family day. We will have one on the Wednesday. Topic to be determined yet. I can almost guarantee that I won't be the one up here because I'm trying to get more people up here. But thank you very much for coming out and talking about showing test value.
Jason, your last month's video, YouTube video doesn't have this screen, like the mind map screen on it, and no.
I believe I did link the mind map. If I didn't, remind me later this afternoon and I'll get it up.